more context about me. So I am a tech head at a social media startup named Susi Consulting. We have an Android app, iOS app. So I'm the only guy in my company, so I am responsible for everything. One funny thing is that I create a Jira ticket, assign it to myself, solve it, and clear it out. So that's the workflow I have in my company. So I have to do everything, and automation is like my only friend in my company. So that is the reason I believe in automating almost everything. So that is the reason I thought of how can you automate deployment. In the past companies I have done deployment manually. Here also I was doing deployment manually for quite a while, but then I realized that it is way easier to automate rather than doing it manually. So without further ado, let's start with the presentation, and I'll share my screen as well. I hope everyone can see the screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Sure. So yeah, today's agenda would be, I will little bit talk about how did we land upon automation. What was the history of like the deployments? How were people in big company? It's not like that we are the first generation to build like a production grade application with like thousands of users, right? So there were like applications being deployed with thousands of users, and what were their like practices, how what were their drawbacks, how did we come up with it, and we'll talk about that as well, and what were the risk in that like practices. And then I will give you a overview about CI/CD pipelines and what is it and how can you, why should you add it in your development workflow, multi-stage deployments and why they are important. So multi-stage deployments meaning like why production, pre-production, staging, development, local, why these stages are important. I will, and what are they, I will talk about that as well. I have a demo with GitHub Actions. So in that we'll see how GitHub Actions work and why did I choose GitHub Actions. I'll talk about in the demos as well. I'll also talk about alternative tools as well, because choices are always good and I don't want people to just stick with GitHub Actions. So there are other tools like free, paid. There are a lot of tools we can use other than GitHub Actions, because of course GitHub Actions has a limit, like 2000 per minutes per month. We'll talk about that as well. And I also will talk about what you should do when you're deploying an application to the production. It's like a checklist I follow, and there are do's and don'ts also in the production checklist. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, raise your hand, write in the chat, stop me anywhere you want. I will clear every doubt I can. Okay, cool. Let's move ahead. So, history and the current state of deployments. So, like a decade ago, I still remember when I was in college, everyone was using XAMPP for web development. When it comes to like deployment, everyone used to like directly zipping the folder and uploading directly into the web file manager of shared hosting, or any file manager uh, you have deployed in your VPS. That was the case a decade ago. That is what I'm aware about. And then came FTP. What FTP allowed us that we had a application. We had an application. Do we had an application like FileZilla, and we used to access the server using FileZilla, and then we used to copy paste the files from the local to the server. And then came the manual git. By manual git means that from local you push to the GitHub repository, and then you access the server, and then you literally like all the git commands and all the server dev commands manually. So that's manual deployment. uh, there were like between the FTP and manual git, there was like, hello, hello, yeah, okay. So there was like automated scripts made between SFTP and FTP, and between the manual get, or before the FTP as well. Like whenever there is a change in the file, you go to the server and you run the script. But the problem with that, the process was too manual. So there was no, like, if your team grew to 10 people who are changing the files, who are not, you never know that. And so that was one drawback about manually deploying your product. And automated pipelines, what automated pipelines made us do is that whenever you push to any like version control system like github, gitlab, or bitbucket, anything, or your own git like server, what it used to do is, as soon as there is a push to a certain branch, it will run the script in an isolated environment. So that was like automated pipelines. You can automated pipelines can help us in testing, linting, deploying. Like if you want to do something like you don't like Laravel PSR12, you like specifically any any linting software. You don't use pest, you use PHP unit. Then that all can be done using like automated pipelines. So risk and drawbacks of those manual deployments. So manual errors, like if your team gets like above 10 people, who is responsible for deployment? If it is more than 1 or 2 people, what is the latest version of the file? There's always inconsistency. There is no like set protocol or list of practices we can follow to deploy. And it's always time consuming because you always have to access the server and then like do your thing, deployment commands. Lack of rollback mechanism, like for example, you are using an FTP, you pushed a file on the server, now you don't know how to take that back, because what if the file is like corrupted or something error, you there is something error in that file and you push that to server, you don't know how to roll that back. Scalability issues, you cannot like it's really difficult to deploy a large scale application when you're using this manual thingy. uh, you can get away with manual git, but still FTP and SFTP are really outdated as of today, and I still see people using that. Poor collaboration. If you have a specific deployment team, so it is really necessary, so you have an automated thingy. Manual thing won't work, you will have like downtime which your users won't like. When you have a user specific or a production grade application, and you have a team, you need to have a protocol or a list of rules, you should list of practices you should have when deploying your application to the production, so that you have a minimal downtime, and there is like your application is scalable as well. If there is any corruption on your file, if some feature is not working, you can roll back that feature, and it is faster as well, so you can roll out faster deployments. So this was the like the risk and the drawbacks of manual uh, deployments. And getting away from it, what is CI/CD pipelines? What is automating? Why should we automate? CI/CD pipelines is nothing but like it's like this diagram. You can say you plan and monitor is okay, but you code and you push to a central repository, central VCS repository, and then it will, like if you have a Docker image, sometimes Docker image takes time, 5 minutes to 10 minutes, and if you have a large Docker image, if you don't have a multi-stage Docker image, it can take up to 15 minutes to build. What if you can outsource that? You can even do that as well. What if your application has thousands of tests and it takes around 5 to 10 minutes again to run those tests? You can do that as well with CI/CD pipelines. What if you have like if you want to deploy it quickly, automatically, you can use that CI/CD pipelines as well. Pipeline is nothing but your codes through like Laravel pipeline. Codes go through certain things so that it can be like manipulated, do things, and whatever actions you want to take accordingly, you can take that. Coming back to like multi-stage deployments. After that, I want to talk about multi-stage deployments. What is a multi-stage deployment? I would like to know if anyone here uses like multi-stage deployment in their company, so that it is easier to know that how many people are actually using multi-stage deployment, and they know that why is it important. Give me a raise of hand, or like talk to me about it. Why and are you using a multi-stage deployment in a company? So I think so. No one is using multi-stage deployments, right, audience? So yeah, what is multi-stage deployment? Multi-stage deployment is you have multiple uh, environments of your code to run the code. For example, you have developed a like feature in a post. You have tested in development, like with 10, 20 users, 50 users, 100 users, and you want to know like what happens sometimes that it doesn't have an error in your code, but when you deploy it to the production, it does have an error. So what to do in that case? You cannot be like that, I'll deploy to the production and check the error, right? So what multi-stage deployment helps us in catch the errors. So what you can do is have an isolated environment for that code. Like it can be a local server, it can be anything, but you can have an isolated environment for that code. You run that, you check that, you run the test if something is breaking, then you deploy it to another server. You can name it anything, staging, or uh, of course, staging is basically uh, high amount of data, fake data, of course, not testing on production data, fake data. And then what you can do is, for example, you have around 1 million user base, so you can test your feature on 1/10 of the database, like 1/10 is 100,000. So you can test that code on like a staging server, so you know if it is working on fake data or not. And then how to test on real data. So what we can do is create a replicate database of the production database. You don't, like, if your database is above 100, 200, 300 gigabytes, of course don't do that, but you can always have a replicate production database. Run your code to check if it is working on the production data as well. If yes, then you can deploy that code to the production. And there is production. So what it helps us in uh, catching the errors early. There is always a consistent deployment process. It's not like that some features directly going on the production. Yeah, of course there are some hot fixes you need to deploy directly on the production, but yeah, it's not like that it's gonna be every time. If you have too many hot fixes, then probably your code is not tested well and there are a lot of errors not catched. So always test your code correctly. So it helps us in catching errors early. It helps us in testing your code in a safe environment without hampering your user base, without hampering your production app. You can test that feature and gradual release. It's not like that you are releasing a feature right away. We can release a feature in a gradual, slowly manner, so that if uh, I think so. Someone mics is on. If it, do you have any doubt? Please. Hello. I am muting you from you. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah. So I was talking about gradual release. It helps us in releasing your code slowly and gradually. And so what it does is that uh, your production, your users doesn't get overwhelmed with the feature, with the errors, and it's not like you're testing on your users. Compliance and security, when you do a security audit, this is always good, because you have a isolated environment to stay to test your code, so it is always good with audits and compliance. Consistent deployment process is that uh, like there are lists of practices even if you're not in the company. It's not like that you're going to be in forever in the company. You have to define a set of rules and practices in the company, right, when you are responsible for deployment. So one day you decided to leave the company, you got a better package and you left the company. What about the other guy? So you should always think about the future of the company as well. So when you have rules and when you have protocols, it helps us not break the code when you are not in the company. And if you decided to take a leave, if your code is not working on a weekend, would you prefer to work on a weekend? Or if of course not, right? So this helps us in like not breaking the production level code. Scalability, of course this is scalable. Why? Because if you have 10 features, you have 10 people team, everyone is working on another feature, everyone is done with the feature, they have deployed their code on a central repository but on a different branch. Like for example, uh, every feature has a different branch. What I did, I am responsible for deployment. What I did, merge that code, run run that code in an isolated environment to check if one feature is breaking my old code, if another feature is breaking old code. So like that we can scale our app easily. uh, uh, um, like 10 features can be deployed at once in production after testing, so it's always scalable. Better collaboration. What it helps is, if you have a team, always have someone to deploy your code. So what it helps is, everyone knows that where I have to push the code, where do I have to get the code from. Central repository, it's always good. uh, so this is the importance of multi-stage deployments. Do you have any doubts as of now? If you have any, let me know, so that it is easier to help. Okay, if no, let's move ahead. So I am going to talk about GitHub Actions specifically, because almost every developer knows about GitHub Actions. It's not like that you will find the people who is developing. It's very rare. Like 99.9% knows about GitHub Actions, GitHub specifically, as as their repo for the code. But what about GitHub Actions? Why GitHub Actions? Because it is easier and it is really user friendly compared to GitLab, Bitbucket. If what if someone doesn't know about GitLab? What if someone doesn't know Bitbucket? What if their code is not on Bitbucket? What if their code is not on GitLab? So GitHub Actions helps, and it's free for open source and open source software. So you can do everything. You can GitHub Actions. Like there are endless possibilities that you can do. You want to make a release, you can do that with GitHub Actions. You want to run a test, you can do that with GitHub Actions. You want to build a Docker image, again, can be done with GitHub Actions. Deployment, that can be done with GitHub Actions. So the thing is that GitHub Actions is really scalable, really user friendly. There is Jenkins as well, but I'm not going to talk. I'm going to talk about Jenkins, but just an overview. We're not going to see anything about Jenkins as of now. So let's move to the demo part. So this is a basic code I have written. Like there is nothing. This is like a default sale Laravel sale application. There is a Docker image. I am running like 3 containers. I don't need Redis part. I don't know why I did that, but I don't know Redis. I don't need Redis part. Even the DB part, I need only this and this. So what I do is, I have uh, this like a script that I can run on my server. First thing first, what you have to do is, either there are two ways to make a GitHub Actions workflow file. You have to create .github folder in that workflow, and then you can create any name you want, any YML file, and then what you have to do is, you have to write a name of the workflow. You can have multiple file, yes, but right now, specifically I have written prod. You can have staging, you can have local, you can have pre-prod, anything you want. You can have a test as well, but this is the most simple code to automate a deployment. uh, this is the file you have to write, like what it defines basically. So on the on push, which branch is master? On pull request, which branch is master? What are the jobs I have to run? So this is like a jobs part. And what did I name the job? Deploy. And when will it runs on describes that what is the environment it will run on. Give me a second. So jobs have steps, that what is the steps you want to do, right? So what it will do is, first it will check out the code in an isolated environment. I can name then I will name it to deploy to server, and then it uses a specific template. I can show you the template as well. This is the template which does SSH action on your server or on any remote action. And then after that, you have to define the parameters. You can find every parameter this template has in the readme file of the GitHub. And after that, you have to define the host, username, port, key, and this is really important. What is the script you want to run? What is the command you want to run when I get access to the server? So these are the things I'll tell you as well, how to set up this. As far as we are good to go, right? Anyone has any doubt here? No. So let's move ahead. How to set up like SSH key and stuff in your. So go to the repo. This is the repo I made for Bangalore. So that is the reason it has BLR. Go to the settings and you will find it here, secrets and variables. You should go to the actions, and you should define all the keys: host, port, SSH key, username. You should have passphrase as well. I didn't have it because I wanted to make the flow easier, but you should always have a passphrase here. Okay. And after that, you should also have a deploy key. This deploy key is an SSH key to your server, so that server knows that GitHub is allowed to access the code. So you can add a deploy key as well. Then done, boom, you are good to go. And as soon as anything happens on this master branch, it will so right now I'll tell you the other way to create a workflow action. So what you have to do is go to the repo, go to the actions file, and then what you can do is new workflow. Basically, these are my workflows, and it will name you the work. Hello, something wrong?
तो दादू आला असताना तुम्ही सगळेच्या सगळे कशाला आले?
Hello, can you mute yourself?
Just a moment. Let me see who's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, please continue, Aditya.
Yeah, sure. So this is the workflows basically you can run here. What you have to do is just create a new workflow here. And see, another advantage of GitHub Actions is it recognize your code. What are you running? So it will help you in that as well. Like for example, Docker image, build a Docker image to deploy, run, push to the registry. Laravel, it recognizes that my project is a Laravel project, and it gives me a workflow to test my Laravel project. It recognizes that it has a package.json file as well. So you can even publish your Node.js package to GitHub as well. It recognizes that it was built on PHP. Then you can even build build and test a PHP application using Composer. So that way it helps you really well, and there are numerous things you can do with it. So for example, I know my app is a Laravel app. It will give me all the things. Yeah, it will give me all the things, so I can do it will give me a template to do what I have to do. Like for example, it is using a Shiv Mathur setup PHP template. Why it is using Shiv Mathur setup PHP specific template? You can of course use the other one as well. I'm not sure about it, but this is the highly updated, highly maintained template. So everyone in the Laravel or PHP world uses this, as far as I know, this specific template. So same thing, it names my the workflow Laravel. It defines the triggers, and it can also accept an array. Like for example, I want to try staging as well. You can write that, and it on a staging, it will also uh, run these jobs. Again, runs on environments, and it has all the steps. Like whenever you are using a template, you have to use it with the parameters. So it is specifying the PHP version, and after that you have to copy all the environment file. So if you are paranoid about your env file, like what if this isolated environment get hacks and my env file get hacks, and there are a lot of like api keys in env file, right? So what you can do is, for specific testing, you can create a .env.ci and only have those variables you wanna like use it in the test, so that your actual production keys doesn't get leaked. It will run the composer generate key. One thing I don't like about this template is specifically that 777. There is no reason you have to like 777 this folder. What I believe is 777, there's always a permission for every folder. 777 should not be used anywhere. This is what I believe. This will create an SQLite database as well, and what it does, it will run your test if you have any, of course. It will run your test. So this is basically how you create a workflow file. What it does, it is creating Laravel YAML file in the master branch on the workflow folders. We are not going to do that, but yeah, this is how it is done. After that it is done, what I'll do is I'll make a basic change and see if it is running or not. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Give it a second. Resources, views, welcome. What are I don't even remember the new production page of Laravel. Let's see, we have documentation, right? We'll change it to Nagpur. Yeah, Laravel has wonderful documentation. How many documentation it has? So what we'll do is Laravel Nagpur. We'll see if it is running or not. I'm not sure about it, but yeah. Commit. It is still checking the commit. So I'm not gonna commit Docker Compose file because I have added to the git ignore, but it is not accepting. So we're not gonna get welcome file. Commit and push anyway, of course. So I've pushed to the master. So if we go to the actions workflow, it hasn't yet like see update welcome dot plate, and it is like uh, deploying my code. What you can how to check the like the output of the code, what you have to do is go to the actions, go to the current workflow if it is running or not, go to that, and then again click on the deploy. This is basically the jobs I only have deploy. That is the reason it is showing one, and it is showing all the things it is doing right now. So what it did was like it run this specific line I mentioned in here, where it is right here, this specific line, and then it ran my deploy.prod.sh. What the first of all what it did was it get pull the command to get the welcome file, and then restarted my Docker container, run all the commands I have mentioned in my deploy.prod.sh. So what I have done in deploy.prod.sh is I'm checking if my application is deployed for the first time as well or not. If it is first time, what I'll do is I'll run composer install, I'll run migrate fresh, I'll run npm install key generate, and first I'll create a file name first run. If it is not first run, if it is like a recurring run, I don't have to run key generate every time, right? I don't have to run migrate fresh every time. So what I'll do is I only run composer install migrate force storage link optimize clear optimize install and run build. You can also, what you can do is, I didn't see this, but you can also run like optimize here, install and build as well. I think so it should be run here as well. So let's see if it did change or not. See, without accessing my prod server, I made a change on my server. This is like the live, if you can see, If you can see, this is the VPS I have. If you can, I'll access. This is my server and get status. Ignore that, of course. It did run npm install as well. I had to add it to get ignore, but it didn't run from. It did pull from my origin master without me doing anything. So that is the beauty of GitHub Actions, I feel like. And you can like update this file as per your like taste. If you don't have Docker, if you have like a raw bare bones application. Yes, but I believe even if it is executed multiple times, it creates the actual link the first time only. Yes, of course, it will only. So the reason I kept it here, you can keep it here as well. But the reason I kept it here is sometimes what I tend to do is I forgot to storage.link command. So it is like a fail check, you can say, that I wanna have a confirmation that it did run the first time or the second time or every recurring time. You can always, of course, remove it. Like I said, it is very customizable. You can do everything you want here. It is highly uh, as per your scenario. Like if you have any DB related stuff, if you have any Redis related stuff, what I tend to do is I have Horizon related stuff as well. I have Octane related stuff as well. So I tend to have commands related to that as well in my deployment production file. This was just the basic. I took it from my, I wrote it. So yeah, it is highly customizable, of course. Does somebody have any doubt? Okay, chalo. Moving ahead. So yeah, so what I did was I created some kind of check. What I follow is a checklist where whenever there's something, like if what if I don't have GitHub Actions, I want to do it manually. Before that, what I used to do is I had a checklist where I used to follow these steps. Like first thing first was restart the Docker container. First thing first was restart the Docker container, and after that, what I did was uh, always run composer install. If I have a new package or someone in my team like installed a new package, I want that in my server. Migrate force, if you only run PHP artisan migrate, it will not let you run the migrate command on a production server. It is like an interactive shell, so you have to like run the force command. Storage link, of course, like if you have any public images and the storage is not linked, the images would break. Optimize clear, I always tend to clear my cache, routes, events, everything, so that whenever I push, always have the new data. Horizon terminate, if you are using queues in Horizon to manage like background task or jobs, always run Horizon terminate when you have a new code in your server. And after that, optimize your code, cache your code, and run npm install and npm run build. Npm run build, what it does, it will build your assets so that you don't it is build your assets for the production server. So whenever I am deploying, these are the do's and don'ts I follow, I practice in my company, so that it is easier for the new new guy to learn in my company. So what I do is first thing first, always connect always connect SSH via with a passphrase. With a passphrase, as in you should always SSH keys should always have a passphrase. Without that, what if your laptop gets stolen, and what if your like server, what if your SSH key gets stolen? So if it doesn't have a passphrase, the attacker or attacker can like imitate as your PC and connect to your server and do anything you want. Backup database and code regularly. What it means is you should always have a backup mechanism for your databases, so that if you lose like the access to your production database, you don't lose the backup database. Create and test backup and restore mechanism. So what I have seen is most of the people has a backup mechanism, but no one has a restore mechanism. No one has a tested restore mechanism. What if like there is a minuscule chance that your server gets hacked, and your data gets stolen or data get deleted, right? In that scenario, you will restore your database. What if your database is corrupted? What if your database isn't backed up like in 2 3 to 4 days? It has been sending notifications that your 4 database backup has not been completed and you have ignored it. What if your 4 5 database backups has been corrupted? So you should always have a restore mechanism. Like there was a story about GitLab. They accidentally deleted the production database and staging database and a backup database as well, because they already had, one guy had the SSH connection to all 3 servers in one place. So always have a restore mechanism. Monitor disk space regularly. What it means is, for example, you have VPS of 80 gigabytes and you don't know how much data you have in that VPS. For example, you are using the same server as like database as your code, and your app is growing tremendously. So if your disk space is like at 90%, 95%, there's a chance that database can get user won't be able to access the app. Update packages and framework regularly. What it means is that you should always have, like you can do this with like GitHub Actions as well using Dependabot. What it helps us is update the dependencies you have in your, like the application. Like Laravel is a dependency, Sparsy is a dependency, so every packages need to be updated and regularly. It's not like that you have to majorly update, automatically majorly update. So what I do is, minor and patch upgrades are automated, but the major updates I do it manually. So if there's any breaking code, I can fix it there and that. Use HTTPS and proper firewall settings. Like if you see this, sorry, if you see this, I didn't even have the HTTPS. If you, I'm not sure, there's a UFW as so if you see, I have, the first thing I did was, UFW is like a firewall for Linux that comes built in with Ubuntu. So these are the only ports that will access my uh, server. Other than that, no one would be able to access my server. So that is the reason you need firewall. AWS also comes with that. You have to uh, setting up access on AWS is like a pain for me. So I don't do that much. But yeah, you should always have that. Implement health checks and proper monitoring. What if your application has like a peak user base? Like your application can handle 1,000 users per hour, and now it has around 5,000, 10,000 users per hour. How would you scale that? You should have like health checks and monitoring. Like what happens sometimes is that Docker containers stops working if there's any error or something like that, even if you have like restart always as a parameter in Docker. So in that case, you should always have health checks in your Docker container as well. And the best thing you should do to after checks is monitoring. You should always monitor your app, what is happening in the application. Like what is the status of your Android application, what is the status of your backend application, how much users can it handle, what is the status of my server, is there any downtime, how much downtime, when was the downtime, is my database able to handle the amount of users I have designed it to. So all that can be done using monitoring. How much request I'm getting, how much bot request I'm getting, that can be done using monitoring. Using queues for background and long running jobs. uh, Queues are basically, so for example, you have a create QR. Whenever there is a, whenever user registers, you have to send them mail, create QR, and do X amount of things. So would you wait the things to complete and then send the response to the users? No, right? So what queues helps us is, helps us the long running tasks sent to the background, and it will run those tasks accordingly. Whenever there is like, whenever it queues allows them. So yeah, and disable debugging in production. Right now I'm not sure like it has C404 not found. So debugging is false right now. So you should always have debugging false in your productions. If it is true, then people will able to see your crucial data, essential data in the server. Limit user privileges. Like only whenever I am accessing this server, only this particular laptop has the access to the server. If laptops get stolen, there is no way I can access those server. So only I have the access, right? Like that, you shouldn't give all the developers, all the users in your company the access to the server, because you never know what they're gonna do. What if they left the company on bad terms? There's always a chance they can hamper your systems, they can hamper your server. So always limit, always give users the privileges they need. For I need the access to the development server, I only get access to the development server, like that. What are the don'ts? We have covered the part of do's. What are the don'ts part of the accessing the when you're accessing the server? So first thing first, never run composer update in production. Why? Anyone here knows why you should not run like composer update in production? I would love to know. Hello.
So, like, you have tested the code with the dependencies versions you have in your local, right?
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you run the composer update, the dependencies will be updated with the minor version, but
Yes.
you don't know if the code is working with that particular versions or not.
Yes. True. So other than that, also it's a git nightmare. So what happens when you run composer update? It updates a composer log file, right? Composer JSON file to the next minor version, right? So the version for that specific package in the local development environment and the production environment is different. So there is a chance that your app won't work on the production. And when you're pushing, like if I do that right away, I won't be able to use this GitHub actions because it will fail, because there can be a merge conflict. There is like unchanged like uncommitted changes on my server, so it will break my GitHub actions workflow. Never run GitHub PHP artisan migrate fresh in production. Why is that? Because what I feel is, if your app is like a 1 year old, you have like a million users. If you run migrate fresh, all your data is gone, because it will run your migration from scratch. So all your data is gone. So never run that. It doesn't allow to run that in production, but if you even still try to do that, don't do that. Don't allow public access to certain directories. Like whenever I push my code to the server and I use Telescope to debug my APIs, I see a lot of requests to access my env file. A huge amount of request to access my env file. So if something I like, I didn't took care of it and I made the env file public. So now the attacker can see all my API keys, all my like the environment variables, and can access it and can do anything he wants. So that is the reason. Give me a second. Yeah, that is the reason you should never don't allow public access to certain directories. Of course, don't hard code sensitive data. Hard code as in you should always have API keys and other stuff in your env variable, in a env file. Never use like AWS API key directly in the code. So what if your API key changes? Then you have to find a way to change everywhere, and it is a pain. So if your code gets leaked, there is a chance that API key get leaked as well. Don't use development tools in production. Right now, I use Telescope in only staging server. Other than that, I am I haven't, but I'm gonna implement Prometheus and Grafana in my server so that I can manage. I can have the data from my production server as well. Right now, I don't use development tools in production. Nothing. I don't have anything to like. No Telescope, no debug bar, nothing. Debugging was also false, so that uh, No attacker can access my development variables. Don't access environment variables directly in the application. This is a fun thing. So what happens when you use directly when env variable directly in your code? Whenever you run a cache command, config cache command, your all uh, the way to sorry the way to access your env. Give me a second. There is a PHP. There is no PHP. Yeah. So what I can do is env like this. Control. Do we have a controller in this? I'm not sure. Yeah. There's nothing in the controller. So there is a env, like for example, env helper here in Laravel. Like for example, I want to access app name. I don't know why it is not working, but it is there. So I'll have to check because it's not a function. This is an abstract class, of course, but yeah, there is a helper class called env. So if you access your env variable directly in your code, uh, after caching your config file, everything would come null, and there is a chance that your application can break. So don't ever use that. Don't use root user for operations. So what I first thing first what I do is, whenever there's a container build, I create a new user and a uid, so that I don't do anything using root user. Same thing here as well. Whenever I set up my server, I create a user, access my server using that user only. I don't do anything using root. So what it helps is, even if my server gets hacked, uh, the attacker doesn't have the root privileges. So yeah, that's that. I am done with the talk. If you guys have any doubt, raise your hands and we'll solve it together. So I see there are a lot of messages. Let's read them first. The main problem is that developers, and once we can make master plan, yeah, but you can always roll back to the previous commit. Is all. So Maya Utsav, right? In that case, you can always push to the master branch, right? So you have committed, right? So you can always roll back to the last commit. There's also a need to prevent pushing to main branch. We use this feature in a lot of local machines, and it may be available with GitHub Premium. Hey, okay, yeah, okay, I'll definitely look into it. So yeah, I am thankful to everyone to keep listening to me, keep bearing with me. Uh, if you'd like to connect, if you have any questions, please let me know so that we can answer it together.
Hey, while you are all coming up with questions, I posted a message in the chat window. All those who want to get into the PHP Storm license giveaway contest, please fill that form. I have posted the link in the chat window. And as Aditya mentioned, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to ask now.
Also, I forgot about mentioning the alternative tools, and after reading the message about the pulse, I just remember, there other than GitHub Actions, you can use Coolify, you can use Laravel Forge, Laravel Vapor, Ploy. These are the application are either made in Laravel or is Laravel optimized. It doesn't mean that this is specifically for only Laravel, but these are the tools available as well. GitLab is also there, Bitbucket is also there. You can use that as well. And for monitoring, I forgot about the Pulse. There is a Laravel first party tool called Pulse as well. I use that in my production server as well as of now. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. Thanks a lot.
So yeah,
So,
thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. This is a QR code where you can connect with me. Okay.
okay. I'll wait just a few more seconds before running that PHP Storm license giveaway contest. If anyone else is remaining, who wants to get into the contest, please fill the form. I have posted the link in the chat window. I've got only 5 names till now. So, Aditya, not a question per se, but just wanted to discuss. Apart from GitHub Actions, have you used any other deployment tool practically?
Yes.
Like, have you used Envoyer or Forge or anything else?
No, there is a first party package called Envoy. I got to learn about that in the Bangalore meetup when I was giving this
Mhm.
talk. So I was not able to research much on that. Other than that, I have not used, I have used Jenkins to automate my deployment.
Mhm.
But the packages were outdated and it was, I didn't like the experience much. So that is the reason I moved to GitHub Actions as GitHub Actions.
Okay.
There is also first party tool Envoyer, which is made on Envoy.
Mhm.
So it helps us to like configure your deployment process directly in the code using like PHP, using PHP. Yes, using PHP. So I felt that it was great, but I was not able to research much about it. So that is the reason I was not able to talk about it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Aditya. This session was really informative, and hopefully, people will be benefited with this. Generally, what happens is we as developers, we as coders, we don't generally deploy code, but sometimes if we deploy code, then it is not the best in the best possible way. So this
Mm.
session will probably help us developers to deploy code in a better way.
Yes. I hope it helps. And if you guys have any questions and want to discuss anything related to Laravel, related to tech, related to Android, you can always hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, any place you can find me. So I'm available everywhere, like Twitter, LinkedIn, uh, Discord as well, WhatsApp as well. That's it. So yeah.
Okay, so let's run